think it's rolling, but this monitor's not.
Oh, I thought we were hearing it though. Okay, back here. Well, that was exciting. What we had a roll-in of this car, this diesel engine. I'd like to just throw something out because when you start understanding the full scope of this marijuana prohibition, I think you have to be incensed. You have to be so angry as to what we have allowed, and not allowed actively, but just by our not speaking out allowed to happen. Here's a substance that the first diesel engine, or diesel, designed the diesel engine to run on vegetable oil. What is the single greatest source of vegetable oil? Is hemp. The diesel engine can run on hemp oil mixed with methanol without any modifications. Oh, the car is now up. Okay, so let's run the car now. So we've got the car up. And can you tell me when the car is finished?
Program. It has been a huge success.
Thank you.
Thousands of San Franciscans have provided the Department of Public Health with prescribing letters from their physician, and in a confidential fashion, the department has delivered.
Matthew, I don't think that's the right. Anyway. We seem to be having a little mayhem, which that's part of the live process. Why don't you take it back to me? That doesn't seem to be the right take either. Let's scrap this idea. Moving right along. You can actually use a diesel engine. You have to modify it to run petrochemicals through it. So it was designed to be used on vegetable oil. So we could actually grow our energy right here in the fields of this country.
Then all those oil people wouldn't be rich.
Oh, you're right. That's what is with that? That we got oil everywhere. This is the whole world is destroying itself over this addiction to oil.
I think an interesting piece of this is now the attempt to include hemp seed oil as a part of Schedule 1.
Oh my God.
And involving all the interdiction efforts.
Right.
And I think it's funny because it kind of ends up involving a lot of the interests of like this very boutique-y culture of Body Shop and the other folks who want to try to market these hemp seed oil type of lotions. Now they're kind of being jammed in this process. And I was at court the other day listening to arguments in the Conant case, which is a case that had challenged the government's attempts to chill doctors from prescribing, or not prescribing, but recommending the use of cannabis to their patients. And before that was this hemp seed oil case. And the government is really actively working to stop the import of hemp seed oil internationally. And I know that's just a very small piece of it, but it's interesting because it's kind of where these two cultures are.
Well, it
clashing,
totally shows
and shows
where,
the ridiculousness.
Right, where our
of the
tax
policy.
dollars are going. And what do we want to do? I mean, that's the bottom line is I don't know what happened to all of us. I don't know what happened to all of us, but something happened, and I know I take full credit for being asleep, but I was asleep. When they were talking about drug testing, I should have been protesting in the street.
I was protesting.
I don't know why I wasn't, and I don't know what happened. Well, no, we weren't loud enough.
Yeah, we weren't. No, as a group, we weren't.
We
I'm
were
saying,
not loud enough.
I wrote a letter
and
to
it was
my
it's sort of the
CEO
beginning
HP
of
on that
poor
topic.
laws. And as a lawyer, that our Constitution started out over here, and right now the Supreme Court has interpreted we are no longer even.
Well, it's not only there, but there seems to be this drug exception. So even where there's, where there seems to be a sliver of the Constitution and our rights that remain,
they cut them out for drugs.
When it comes to issues around drug and drug
and they have no education and they have no science
exception.
to back themselves. And I sit there and I get on the stand and I make my statements, and they
They
can't.
do have the science, but it's just counter to what they're saying, so they bury it. The science is there.
Well,
it's
of
not that
course.
the
But
science.
I'm saying they have no science
exists,
on their side.
Not on their side.
But one issue that brings one experience I recently had that brings these two issues together was I was at the oral arguments in front of the Supreme Court where the ACLU has challenged drug testing high school students.
Oh, thank God.
High school students who are engaging in extracurricular activities, and it seemed like an easy case based on Fourth Amendment constitutional law. And we're sitting there, in these hallowed chambers, and it's all very austere, and it's very somewhat, intimidating. And the members of the U.S. Supreme Court were using language that was very similar, if not identical, to the protesters that were standing outside on the front steps.
Thank God.
Who were kind of hounding Ethan Nadelman and Stroop from kind of presenting their messages, and so it was frightening
Well,
that
they
in
were
the Supreme
calling
Court.
people druggies.
Right.
Oh, they were
exactly.
using the
word
bad-
druggies.
They were using bad language.
Yeah,
No,
the bad
sorry,
language,
no,
not
no,
support,
not
not
all.
bad
That's the
language.
bad
Yeah, the
language.
bad
I'm talking about
language, yeah.
the
I was
protesters
wondering what you
against
said.
us.
Oh,
on the front
against us
steps,
out there.
who
Well,
were out
okay.
there saying that you're
Yeah.
killing our children. The language was so similar to the language
Right.
being used by the Supreme Court drug
Well,
justices,
but you know
calling
how they
people
get their
druggies and
appointment. They're not elected to those offices, and we can't get rid of them. So they're there for life as long as they want to live there. And honestly, that's not a system that I think works. But the bottom line is we have got to have some way of organizing on a grassroots level, because I really feel that the individual human being believes in America as a free country, and that you have free choice. And how the Supreme Court interpreted, I believe it was roughly 60 years ago, that you did not have the right to put any substance into your body you chose, as long as you were not harming any other individual.
be the
And
bottom
they
line.
reinterpreted that particular decision. Previous to that, the Supreme Court had felt that it was your God-given and your constitutional right to use any drug you
It's
wanted.
your God-given right. No, any state that would pretend it can have supremacy over the state of consciousness
Of your own
a
body,
sovereign
in your own
individual,
bedroom, at
when
your
you're not
own
hurt,
time.
Yes, and that is that's why I call it fascism.
That's
'cause
the
that is
fundamental
the definition
point,
of fascism.
Right. That's the point where it all went
that's where it all
That's
sour.
the
comes together.
fundamental, and that's a good segue to this whole religious argument. This country, we're talking about the Constitution, how it's been voided by interpretation. One of the fundamental things in the Constitution is freedom of religion. What is, freedom of religion, freedom of religion? Well, this goes back to a question you never answered. Maybe I'll pose this again to the whole panel, is there seems to be a very compelling freedom of religion argument that we could make as a class action lawsuit against the federal government. Now, isn't it strange that you have to think about the people mounting a class action lawsuit against the federal government? It's a bizarre concept to start with, because the only way it's going to be done, I think, is through protest or lawsuits like this, because voting obviously doesn't work. You worked hard, Dale, to get 215 going. When that passed, and it was a landslide, 60 to 40 or whatever the numbers were. It was a landslide. And the fact that the federal government comes in and says effectively, "Oh, you silly children, you
don't do that.
You do bad children. You're not supposed
Naughty,
to do that."
naughty.
Naughty, yeah.
You do have to differentiate between the state of California, which does have enlightened laws on this subject,
And is trying really hard.
continues to believe in them, I think, even more strongly now than when we first
People like
passed
Terrence
it.
Hallahan.
You have to, and the people in the Bush White House who are amongst the most dyed-in-the-wool last century reactionaries I've ever seen.
Oh, my God. These people.
We have an attorney general who goes up to Oregon to try to void their assisted suicide laws. Fortunately, gets struck down. But now we have the same thing going on. They're trying to close the cannabis clubs here in California, and we're going to see, I think, some more raids coming up any day. They have arrested more people for medical marijuana offenses in California since September 11th than they have arrested terrorists. In fact, they haven't arrested any terrorists here in California. But we've got, probably a dozen people now in the federal court system on marijuana charges.
Ed Rosenthal.
And they're good people.
Yeah,
They're
Ed Rosenthal. They the same kind of thing. Look at the people here. I've been, under the gun on this in Nevada, driving to Burning Man, caught in this dragnet. It's what they're using it as a way to control. I think this is an aspect that people don't talk about as much. I think they're seeing this counterculture. They're seeing this new utopian movement, new consciousness, whatever you want to call it, this new way of relating to the planet with each other, and they're freaked out because they can't control it.
Well, I don't think it's new. I think it started in the 60s. They
Well, of
realized
course,
how
of course,
dangerous
yeah.
it was then.
Started in the
They
60s,
squished it
right.
for a few years.
And now it's
we're all
coming,
right. We're all
we're the
coming.
60s.
We're coming back
Come
because
back
we're saying
with
this is
law degrees.
ridiculous.
But I do think that you brought up a really good point, which is that this new war on terrorism is really just providing, in many ways, the excuse to dump more money into the same tools that have historically been used on the war on
Right,
drugs,
to deny
and
us
that has
our
been
freedoms,
losing
to take our
popularity
constitutional rights,
continuously
exactly,
over the last 30 years.
and to cost
And
us
this kind of
billions
just
of dollars
pumps it
instead
up.
of
Right,
putting it in our
exactly.
schools
Right.
and putting it on our mothers who are sick, who didn't learn parenting from their mothers who were sick, who didn't, teach parenting.
Yeah,
the
it's-
cycle goes round and round.
Well,
you don't
it's-
cure child abuse by abusing children.
right.
You don't cure drug addicts
And you
by
also
putting
don't
them
stop
in
war with
jail.
war, which is
And
another-
exactly.
You
And
don't
when
stop
you
war with
have a
war.
war, there are always casualties. This is the war on the United States American public.
It is
When
the
did
war
we
on
sign
drugs,
up
yes.
for
The
a
war
war
on
on
drugs
us?
is, let's be clear about this, the war on
on
drugs
the
is a war on
U.S.
us.
citizenry.
It's a war
Well,
on
you know,
me,
I think-
it's a war on
yeah.
you, it's a war on,
But I
it's
also
a war
want
on
to
all
point
of
out,
us.
it is a war on us, but it's also not being focused on us. It is being focused and targeted in large part on poor communities and communities of color
Right.
in our urban centers and in our. And I'm not saying that we're not also being targeted,
there's an ethnic
but there's that
cleansing
piece of it
aspect to it
that
as
is
well.
really important. And who's ending up in prison
The
for
fact
the
that the
large
black-
part are African American
Right,
men,
exactly.
and that it's decimating an entire
It is.
sector of our community, which we need to build.
Right, we need to look at it this way. I mean, how short-sighted are we? We couldn't remember that we needed 4 digits for a computer, so we went through the panic of 2000.
Right.
Okay, we are so short-sighted now that we do not comprehend that I am 45, and someday those 5, 6, and 7-year-olds will be my policemen.
Right,
Someday those 5,
Well,
6,
hopefully
and
not.
7-year-olds
Hopefully
will
they won't be
come in the
policemen.
ambulance to help me, or be the nurse at the hospital. And if we don't put our money, our energy, and our love into our children now, we won't have a future.
That's
It's
a
funny,
very good point.
I mean, I think having them be police officers, or there being some policing in our. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. But it's what we do with policing that's so particularly bad.
Right,
If
if
they
they were
stick to eating
protect and
donuts,
serve-
if they stick to
No, no,
eating
no,
donuts and
protect and
traffic
serve.
control,
Protect and serve.
Protect and serve is fine.
Leave
I'm
me
up with
alone in
that.
my own room, in my
Protect
own
and
house.
serve, protect and serve, I'm good with.
Something,
But,
someone that who I can really tell my kid, if you're lost or you're in
Yeah, go
trouble,
to
Go to this guy.
go to a
Yeah,
police
you go to
officer.
this one.
That's what
Yeah.
But I think people have to understand that these drug laws are really a crime creation program, and they are for the benefit
Right.
mainly
Well,
of the
the
people who
criminal-
enforce them, and those are the
Of the
people who
state.
actually wrote those laws.
And
By
we're
the
going to
way,
lose their
That's
jobs
exactly
if
right.
we change
Exactly
the
right.
laws.
And it's a self-fulfilling.
It's a self-fulfilling thing.
it's
It's
a
a self.
Well, and just like the
it's
alcohol and
It's
the-
like the scene in Monty Python, the Search of the Holy Grail. They're burning the witch.